Good morning in North America and good evening in Asia. Welcome to our InAmerica online webinar series. Today we are talking about during the application season, what will be there after November 1st. So it has been a crazy week for us and for our senior applicants to submit the early round of applications to US schools. And we do want to share that after the application, what are the to-do lists for students and what are the next steps. And before we get started, I just want to mention that we are using the caption interpretation function for those audience who will be more comfortable with Chinese instead of English. So if you can see the menu, there will be a caption function. You can just turn it on and set the speaking language to English and set the caption language to Chinese, and you will see all the translation. And I will repeat this information in Chinese again, and that will be the only Chinese part for this webinar. 好的，如果大家呢更偏向于看中文的字幕呢，大家可以打开我们的中文翻译这样的一个功能，我们也已经开通了这个功能，大家可以看一下菜单栏的字幕，打开这个功能之后呢，把自己的这个字幕语言改成中文，然后把这个说话人的语言改成英文，这样的话大家就可以看到中文字幕了。这同时呢，这也是我们这次的会议期间的唯一的中文部分。后面呢，我们都会通过英文去交流，包括我们后面呢也不再提供这样的一个中文的翻译。这样的话，我们可以使我们整体的会议更有效率。Okay, and let's get started. And actually, I will invite one of our speakers today, Jason, who has been working as a consultant for college admission, to briefly introduce yourself before we go into our subtopics.
Hey everyone. My name is Jason, and I've been working in the college advising industry for around 5 years. My background is I got a PhD from Duke University in the humanities, and I'm excited to share some tips and tricks with you this evening or morning. Yeah.
Thank you, Jason. And just a bit more information about myself. So my name is Yang, and I'm working as an associate consultant for college preparations and enrichment at InAmerica. And I will be the host for this webinar. And Jason will be sharing more contents about what we will do after the November 1st deadline. And then I want to share a bit of overview of today's topics, which will include what happens after you submit your college application, and also about some important parts for college interview, and some tips about how to prepare college interviews. And then we want to give more information about the strategies to follow up with your application, and also the next step, which is get ready for your UC applications. And at the last part, we will share some frequently asked questions, and Jason will share some of our thoughts and insights before we end this webinar. At this time, I will actually hand this over to Jason. I will stop sharing. And Jason, feel free to share and take this over.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chang. Let me share the presentation. Okay. So as we covered, here's the overview of the lecture. But let's get started on the first thing that you do after you submit your college application. So you're done with the early action, some of the early decision schools. I know that this was probably one of the most stressful times, the November 1st deadline. But there are a few additional things to do before the next round of regular decisions and to keep up with your college application to make sure you're on track. So the first thing, and this is the major one, is to begin the college application portal. So what is this? The application portal is something that colleges will send you after you submit the Common App to their school. So it's a way for them to track your admissions status, for them to contact you about updates regarding your application, other things that they may need. So oftentimes during the application portal, they'll request additional information about official score reports. Some of them will have supplements. These can be video interviews or small things like this. And then lastly, they might request an in-person interview, and you'll be uploading your own information and responding to requests through this application portal as well. So generally, these come out about a week or so, or a few days to a week after you submit your application. And you very much want to check the portal as well as the email that's linked to this portal. So you want to link a commonly used email, one which password that you remember, and consistently look at that email and make sure there's nothing that you're missing. Again, you want to be on track of alumni interview request, possible additional information, and make sure there's nothing that turns out that the college says, oh, this is missing from the application. So here's just an example you can see on the right. This is the Harvard application portal. Here's some forms they might ask you to upload, some of your status from your application, and so on. Now, the last thing that I want to mention for this is that it's also an opportunity for some colleges for you to submit a portfolio if that applies to you. So a lot of students may apply to art majors and have experience with art. You can add an additional supplementary portfolio to complement your application. For other majors that do not require it, and even for some art majors that do not require it, it's not entirely necessary. And it's typically only recommended that you submit a portfolio if it's strong, if you feel like it's going to be above the average student, not if it's kind of a hobby that you do occasionally, but if it's something that's more substantial, and something that's quite important to you, you spent a lot of time doing it, it can be a little boost to an application. Lastly, some colleges, for instance, like architecture or studio art BFAs, will have that as part of their application, required aspect of it. Most will have you upload it after you submit through things like Slide Room, but still a few may have things that they want you to upload through a portal like this one. So that is something to keep in mind. Okay, so this will be your first step. And again, you're reminded to check the portal at least once a week, and also be checking the email account that you associate with it. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. The second thing that you want to do after you submit, and this is another kind of element to stay on top of your application process, is called demonstrating your interest for that school. Now, hopefully you're doing this before you submit your application, but you can also do it after. And if you weren't doing it before, it's not the end of the world. You can continue after, once you submit your application. So let me begin by defining demonstrated interest. So a lot of colleges will track whether or not you are, and try to assess whether or not you are interested in attending their school. So of course you are a bit interested, you applied to their university, but they want to know, if they admit you, how likely are you to attend? And so they have different ways of doing this. They will track the amount of times that you've come in contact with that school. That can be anything from a visit to their campus to reaching out to one of their admissions officers or representatives, or attending a college fair, to even a virtual tour. These are all good things to do because colleges want you to be interested in attending. They want to know that if they accept you, you are very likely to go to that school. Now, you may ask, okay, why do they care about this? Why do they want students that they accept to attend at higher rates? Well, there's a kind of simple answer to that, which is that a lot of their rankings depend upon what's called a yield rate, which is the percentage of students who are accepted into that school that actually attend that school. And so they want to make sure that people that they are accepting are attending that school. It's quite an important metric for them to track. And the way that they can be sure of that is for you to demonstrate your interest. So again, the way for you to do this is to look at different events that you can attend, even after you submit your application. So that will be, again, these college fairs, online visits, seminars, various things. Sign up for emails, make sure to click on their emails, visit their website. They will be tracking all those sorts of things. So lastly, some people often ask, how many, is it every school that's interested in your demonstrated interest? Is it only some? How much do they care about it? So this depends on each school. And you can see here, I have a little chart of just a small sample size, and I provided a link to a list of every school that you can look into. But except for the Ivies, most of the schools will track demonstrated interest. So a lot of the top schools as well. So I listed some here: Duke, NYU, Northwestern, Northeastern, U Chicago. They'll typically rate it as important or considered, but it's a box that you definitely want to be checking. And a lot of the top schools will look at this. Okay. So let me move on to the next component of the application. We can return to demonstrated interest a bit later as well. So here's what I was mentioning about why schools track demonstrated interest. Again, it's important for their college rankings. But now we can move to the third component of submitting your application, which is scheduling an interview. So I mentioned this before, that one of the things that can happen through the portals and the email is colleges contacting you to set up an interview. So there's a question that people often ask: who is going to reach out? How do I know if a college has an interview? First, you can do a quick search on their website, see about their interview policies. Some schools are moving away from interviews. Others are doing video interviews that you might submit just personally, you by yourself, giving a 2-minute pitch. But the most common way that schools do them is to have you be contacted by an alumni in your local area or over Zoom. And if that opportunity arises, you typically would like to take it. It's a way for you to enhance your profile, provide a face to the numbers, and it allows you to discuss some of your extracurricular activities, your interest, in greater detail. Now, in a few slides, we'll talk about the techniques and tactics for how you should interview, and I'll do a little preview of this. We have another presentation of interviews coming up in the next week or so, interview camp, but I will give a brief overview of some commonly asked questions and some tactics that you can use for them. I should also mention that if a college is explicitly asking for an interview with you, then you should certainly accept. They'll be slightly worried if you decline this. It can raise a red flag. They'll be like, oh, well, we gave an opportunity for the student to present themselves. Why are they hesitant? Why are they scared? Yeah, so you would definitely want to take advantage of that opportunity. So again, I'll return to this in a bit later in the presentation to give some tips and tricks. Okay. The other things that you should do immediately after submission is making sure you're maintaining your GPA and your extracurricular projects. So, yep, colleges, even for EA and ED, will eventually see your full progress reports. And so you want to maintain your GPA. They don't want to see that your grades have declined dramatically. Second, for regular decision rounds, you're often submitting your first semester reports, and so you want to continue to be on top of that. Second, what often happens for ED choices is that you can get deferred. So what they're saying is, well, we appreciate your application. We think there might be competitive. We still want to consider it, but we're going to put it into the main pool of applications. We'll see how our class shakes out, and we might accept you or not at that point. If that happens, again, that school is going to be very invested in how you're doing, your updated grades, and so you want to make sure to maintain your GPA at the very least, and if not, try to improve it. So this is just a small thing to note. Lastly, is working on your financial form. So this is kind of the one of the more long-term projects. So the FAFSA typically can come out in like December, January, and due over the summer. So it'll be summer 2024. But it's a way for you to fill out this free form to see if you can get some federal aid for colleges. It's like the Common App in that it's one form for all of the schools, but it's something to keep in mind as what you will be working towards later on. Okay. So let's return back then to the college interview and discuss what schools might be looking for. So pretty much they have their approach is to have a checklist of things that you either check off or don't. Again, college interviews are not going to be the most important thing on your application, but there's supplementary material that's often, quite important and can add a lot to your profile. So here are things that they look for: good communicator, likable person, will contribute to campus, intelligent. All right, they want to just, have a baseline for you. Are you likable person? Do you get along well with others? And then lastly, this gives you an opportunity to highlight things about your application. So likely your interviewer is not going to be extremely familiar with your application. They're not going to be familiar with your Common App, not necessarily have read your personal statement or things like that. But it's a way for you to highlight certain activities that you have done or general interests that you may have at their university. So you really want to go into an interview maybe with a list of 3 to 5 activities that you will highlight during the process of the interview. So that can be, find a top extracurricular. Okay, so let's say you are a captain of your school's swim team, and you've done quite well, you've received some recognition. Maybe you want to think of ways that you can work this into your application. Probably some academic interests as well, your major and things like that. But so that's the general overview of what they're looking for. Again, it's kind of a checklist of personable, good communicator, likable, can contribute to campus, and also highlights to enhance your application. So let's go now into the basics of how to exceed in a college interview, and then we'll discuss some questions that they commonly ask. Okay, so first, for the dues list, a very common question that you will see is why this school in particular. So the school that you're interviewing in, you will need to do research about that school before you attend that interview. You will want to give very specific answers of why this particular institution is a good place. So that can mean referencing programs that they have, clubs, study abroad opportunities, maybe even faculty members that you would like to work with. Some of the things that you may have mentioned on your supplementary essays are good here to mention in the interview as well. Okay. Second thing is about basic presentation. So they're pretty flexible with dress styles, but it's nice to wear a button-down shirt. Shake hands with the person if you're if it's not a remote interview, and avoid slang words like cool, saying like or too many times, but keep it relatively in between formal and casual. You can follow your interviewer's cue there, but you don't want to be overly casual. You don't want to be using slang. You have to remember that although they're alumni, they're ultimately evaluating you for the college. Okay. So these are some other tricks, tips. Just bring your resume. Again, for an in-person interview, you want to make eye contact. And if you're over Zoom, you definitely need to have your camera on. That's sort of a mandatory thing. Other things, which are general times for each question. So oftentimes students give too short of answers for interviews. Students will give a one-word answer, or even a one-sentence answer, but the interviewer doesn't want to feel like they're doing all the work of the conversation. Again, one of the main things they're looking for is communication, personability, likability, and that entails, telling them a bit about yourself, having a nice back and forth, some sort of exchange. So the general rule of thumb here is at least like 1 to 3 minutes per answer. You always want to ask yourself, if you've run out of things, why do I like this? So if you give an activity or a interest, why is that interest important to you? Why is that activity important to you? What did it do for you? Why is it significant to explaining who you are as a person? Okay. Another common mistake that people make is that they're a bit too negative. So we'll see in the next slide that colleges will kind of ask you these questions for you to be a little critical. They'll ask you some weaknesses that you may have in academia, and they also might even ask you to say, what are some things you can improve about your high school? Now, a trap that students fall into is being way too negative here, either about themselves or about their school and their environment and things like that. You can be slightly critical. You can say, sometimes I procrastinate and leave things to the last minute, but you will want to make sure to end on a positive note. How are you going to overcome those obstacles? Which things do you do to avoid your flaws and become a better person? What types of things are you doing? So again, if you begin negative and positive and don't go too negative. Similarly with your high school, you say, here are some things that I thought I was lacking. I wish I could have taken a class on advanced US history, something like that. My high school didn't offer that. But you still want to be a bit positive. Here are some things that did offer. Here's why I would like to take the class. Here's why I'm looking forward to studying US history in college. Again, they like to see optimistic students who are energetic and also willing to engage with the community around them. So that's what they're looking for. Okay, last thing. So again, we'll address this in the next slide about asking your own questions. So towards the end of every interview, they'll say, do you have any questions for me? That you want to say yes to that question and come prepared with a few questions that you can ask about the school, their experience at the school. And you want to make sure these questions are not easily things that you can Google. So, questions that are quite simple, like, where's your cafeteria located? What is the most popular major on campus or something? Even things like that, it's a little too easily researchable answers. So experiential stuff is always good. Like, what is your favorite thing about the campus? Interested in X program. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Are always good ways to go. Lastly, after the interview, say, within 24 hours, write a follow-up email thanking them for their time. That sort of stuff goes a long way. It shows maturity and organization that you want to demonstrate. Okay. Yeah, so those are the basics, and we can discuss some of the common questions that they will ask you in the next slide. Yeah, so this first question is often the most difficult to fully answer because it's vague. and you're not sure where to go with it. So I would say this one is good to prepare for. It's tell me about yourself. And it's often trips students up because there's a bunch of different directions that you can take it. I would say for this one, it's often advantageous for you to begin with some of your personal interest, and then maybe link them to your academic interest. So you're kind of focusing the question in one direction, and maybe you can tell them what you're majoring in college, so they know kind of, okay, this is X type of student, here are their interests, here's what makes them stand out. You're sort of telling them your unique features, both personally and academically. We discussed some of these before, and I won't go through all of them, but I do want to touch on a few. So for a lot of these questions, generally you want to have an experience in mind or an example that you can point to as demonstrating what you claim. So if you're talking about an academic strength, you can say, well, I think I excel in math. But you don't want to leave it there. You want to, in a way, show them how you excel in math. It's a great way to bring in some of those extracurriculars that we discussed earlier. Again, coming to the interview with 3 to 5 things that you want to showcase. So here, maybe you showcase, well, I did well in the AMC math competition. That was really important to me for X, Y, and Z reasons. I also, demonstrated my strength in math by being the head of math club at my school. Here is a great opportunity where I did A, B, and C, and I would love to continue this in college and beyond. So again, these types of answers are providing concrete examples for your strengths and also highlighting some of your key extracurricular activities. Lastly, you'll see towards the end that there will be these kind of more fun questions in that they want to, get to know your interest outside of the classes that you are forced to take and the books that you are forced to read. So like a favorite book, favorite movie are things that they will often ask you. There, again, you want to toe the line between academic, but also fun, and feel free to be decently honest. In terms of books, it's nice to come prepared with some that you might say. I would avoid the ones that are like the most common books that you see in class. So I would just say you can look up in like Goodreads, the most top 10 common high school books, like To Kill a Mockingbird is often there. I would try to avoid those. They're looking for, again, what makes you stand out. So yeah, think about unique books. It could be in your area of interest, could not be. You can see how the interview is going. You can be a bit playful. If you already mention a good deal of academic stuff, you can pick a more playful one, maybe a crime thriller that you read recently or something, if you have already talked about some academic books and things like that as well. Okay. Yeah, so here's, again, my brief overview of the interview questions. We're also, InAmerica is also running a seminar that will go more into detail about the college interview process, but want to give a brief overview here, and again, these questions. Okay, so next steps. With the portal sort of done and covered, the next steps that you will face are the UC applications. So these are due at the end of November, and they are a bit different from the Common App. So like the Common App, it's one application for a few schools, but just for the UC system, obviously. Now, while the Common App has the activities list that you just finished completing, the UC system has a different version of that same list in which they give you 20 activities to list your skills, interests, and awards. So Common App, typically they divide the award section. You get 5 on their education and then 10 activities. The UCs combine them all into one. Now, another important difference here is the character limit as well. So it's more than double the Common App character limit. Of here you have 350, Common App you had 150. A lot of the things that you discuss in the Common App, you will be discussing here as well. You'll be discussing your awards, your skills, your hobbies, and so on, anything that you spent a significant amount of time doing outside of the classroom. But you will want to edit your descriptions a bit because you can have more space to elaborate on them. So you will kind of work closely in working on those, expanding some activities, thinking of other things that you do outside of school as well. 20 gives you enough space to really sort of expand and talk about all the things that you've done, and you don't have to curate it as much as you do for the actual Common App. Lastly, a question that I often get is how many of these activities should I mention? And what I advise students is to mention as many as you can. So if you can try to fill up the 20, that's great. If you can't and you feel like there's really just no activities, that's all right as well. But always begin by putting down more and then work from there to narrow down to the most important ones and all the relevant activities. But if you can fill up to 20, that is recommended. Okay. Lastly, the essay structure is a bit different as well. So there are 4 essays instead of the 1 for the Common App. And you have 350 words for each. Again, it's almost close to half of what you have for the Common App. So it's around 2-3 paragraphs. For these essays, you can use a lot of the prompts and the writing that you did at the Common App level and for the school-specific supplements for your applications for the UC system. Now, you will have to edit those applications. Often, if you use a bit from your personal statement, that's going to be much longer and therefore won't work. But a lot of the supplements, particularly the essay of what community are you involved in, and what have you done to show an impact and change in that community is also one that the UC applications ask as well. And it's often sort of compatible in terms of word count as well, and it's good to use. So let me show you some of the main questions that they're asking for UCs. Yeah, and you can see here that some of them are similar to the Common App, but they're a bit shorter. Yeah, so here they have creative ones. They also have a sort of a challenge that you faced. Again, this is very similar to one on the Common App. Here's 7 is the community one that I was discussing earlier. It kind of works nicely with a lot of the supplemental essays that you do, and so I typically recommend that students take a look at that one. But yeah, so here are the general UC essays. Yeah. All right. The next thing I want to go over is other kind of strategies for as you progress throughout the application process and move into the regular decision and early decision 2 round. So it's good to have, even before you hear back from your early decision and EA schools, an ED2 option that you're considering. So just know personally, this is the one that I would apply to if the ED1 doesn't work out, and begin working on that essay first, as it's the most important. So a few of the qualifications about ED2. So early decision 2 works the same way as early decision 1. It's just another chance to do early decision, get an admissions boost, and tell colleges that you're committing to them. You're signing a contract that you're going to go to this school. This contract is quite hard to get out of. So again, make sure you're interested in the school that you do decide to apply ED2 to. But there is a slight caveat, which is that ED2 schools, because it's a bit later in the season, the admissions rates are not as high as the ED1 often. Now, this is not true for every school, and there can be some variance here, but I just wanted to give an example here of Vanderbilt. So you can see ED1 rate of acceptance, 24%, ED2 rate, 10%. Now, this is still much higher than their regular decision rate, so you're getting a decent boost, but not as much, of course, as the ED1 round. Now, there are other schools which this is not the case, that the ED2 is very close to the ED1 round, but it's something that you're going to have to check in for your ED schools and factor that into your decision. Okay. Last thing that I really wanted to cover here were deferrals and waitlists. So one of the common things that happens when applying ED1 is you will get a deferral. So not a rejection, not an acceptance, but a moving of your application into the regular round of college acceptance. So they're going to review you with the general application pool. You did apply ED, so they do know that you're quite interested in attending, and that is still helpful. But there are a few things that you want to do if you receive a deferral, and then later for the regular decision round, a waitlist. So a deferral offers an opportunity for you to enhance your application. Perhaps you've taken the SAT again during the time period of after you submitted your early round application, and you did better on your SAT. That would be a great sort of score to update the colleges on. Hey, my score increased 50 points. That is a strong boost to your application. They'll also be checking your first semester senior year grades as another way to evaluate how you're doing and see if you can add something to your application. Lastly, and this is true especially for waitlists as well, if you are waitlisted or deferred, you can often contact the colleges and provide an update on your progress. So that can be in form of a resume or new sort of projects and extracurricular activities that you have undertaken. Maybe you had previously worked as a head of computer science club, but now you enter this competition, you got a new award. Maybe you've recruited an additional 10 members for your computer science club. You expanded the scope of the club. They're doing new activities. Those are all things that you can update colleges on, and they will appreciate that. For all of your waitlists and deferrals, you want to reach out, at least know that, let the college know that you're interested in pursuing the waitlist. Again, that's going to be very important for the demonstrated interest component. So you can do this by, in your application portal, reaching out to an admissions representative directly by email, like locating the one that is assigned to your region, saying, oh, hi, thanks so much. I wanted to update you with the progress. I'm still really interested in this university. Here are some additional materials that you might appreciate. Like I said, this can range from anything for club updates. If you're a newspaper, I like to use this example. You can give an article that you may have written if you feel like this article is strong that was published in your school newspaper. Things like this that can add some personality to your application, show that you're interested, and help you stand out from the general pool. Okay. And then lastly, this is just a general thing. So I mentioned SATs earlier. A good website for checking out, sort of a bonus tip, whether or not you should submit your SATs, is this National Center for Education Statistics. It will have the median of a school, so the 50th percentile SAT score, something that is useful to check out, okay, where do I stand in relationship to the school? What score should I be aiming at later for the regular decision? Or if I got a deferral, what do I need to really help me stand out? So here, for instance, is University of Chicago. You can see their 50% of their students scored at least a 760 on the reading section, the SAT. You can say, okay, well, I need around that score in order to be able to submit it. I want to be at least in the 50th percentile or above generally for my application. If you're around that, it's okay, but that's the general strategy and provides you with some aims. Okay. So just to summarize, we've covered 5 different areas. So from the portal to interviews to UCs, EDs, and then deferrals. But that's pretty much what I want to discuss during this meeting. Yeah, I will now we can look at some commonly asked questions, and then we'll end there. So one more slide. Okay. So these are what I think a lot of students ask when I've given this presentation in the past. The first most common question is, okay, I'm panicked. I didn't demonstrate my interest for the school beforehand. What can I do to make up for it? Is there a problem? The answer is no, there's not a problem. Again, it's good to be consistent, but it's okay if not. You can make up for it in a variety of ways. I've mentioned them before in the presentation, but you want to attend anytime the school is visiting your high school. Attend those sort of meetings. See if you can reach out for events in your city that the college is putting on. Contact the school. You can send some emails, go on their website, open the emails that they send you, and of course, see if you can sign up for interviews and alumni engagements. All good ways to show your interest. And then last, another question that people ask in regards to the deferrals and wait lists is, how much should I be in contact with colleges? Should I send them additional things? Like how much is too much? When do they not want to hear from me? So the answer to this is, again, for a lot of the deferrals and wait lists, it's a sign that they do want to hear from you. And you should feel free to contact them. In general, if you just applied regular decision and you're or early action and ED and you haven't heard back yet, it's not unless something really major happens, you're not going to be reaching out and updating them unless they ask you to. But that's just kind of the rule of thumb. Yeah, and so I hope this was helpful. Yeah.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, we can see there are still a lot of things going on after the first deadline, and the students will be getting ready for UC applications and also for schools in Canada, in Hong Kong, and other districts. And if our audience, you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our email, which is info@inamericaedu.com for any questions. Or if you are an enrolled student, feel free to reach out to your consultants. So we are happy to answer any of your questions about this. And thank you for being here, everyone, and thank you, Jason, for sharing. And we will see you all very soon.
Bye. Good luck.